And that was our cue to begin. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the May edition of the Do Tell Story Swap based in Sonoma County. And of course, we've gone nationwide because we have Bev and sometimes we have Sharon from Washington and we have people from all over. So welcome. It's wonderful to see everyone. I am Brandon and I am a board member at the Storytelling Association of California. But I'm an avid, very loyal member of the Do Tell Swap first. And I enjoy this every month. Welcome. Generally, we tell stories that are 5 to 7 minutes. You just let Katie Mangan, one of the co-chairs, know, and she will put you in the roster of tellers we have for tonight. If your story is a little longer, you can ask for permission in advance. And tonight we will be, Katie, did you want to give a kind of a marker at 5 minutes? Are you going to do that, or did you want to just reserve that for the longer stories?
I'm going to reserve that for the longer stories. So at 10 minutes, I'm going to unmute myself and just say, you have 2 more minutes. Okay. And then you can just continue on. So let me just, here's Genevieve. Genevieve, good evening. Do you have a story to tell tonight?
I would love to tell a story in the second half if I could. Is that all right?
Sure. How long is it? Do you know?
I can tell you exactly in a little bit. Let me
okay.
Let me look at it, okay? Yeah. Let me see if I can find.
So I was just saying, Genevieve, that I'm going to just unmute myself if the story reaches 10 minutes and just let you know you have 2 minutes to wrap it up. This is for everyone. So yeah, we're all on the same page.
No, mine, I have not recorded it at any time, but it should be somewhere well within the 10 minutes.
Okay, so Genevieve, I'm just going to put you after Vicky, I think. So we'll just go down the list here.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. It's good to have you here.
It's good to be back. I feel so fortunate, so blessed. And now we've got thunder and rain. Oh my God.
I know.
Hail.
Hail too.
Yes.
A little extra.
Well, once again, welcome everyone and welcome to Genevieve. Glad you made it. See, Elaine, you weren't the last one in. And let's see, we generally tell a few stories and then right around the 8 o'clock hour, we take a very short break and you can get a beverage or use the bathroom. And then we'll come back and we'll introduce ourselves. And the way we do that is we usually have a prompt. And you can say who you are, where you're from, and answer a brief prompt, 3 sentences or so. There might be some announcements from Katie and others who have events going on. I know Katie has something to say about a fantastic workshop that just happened. And that was given by one of the members of our swap. So let's see, way back in April, we didn't get through all the tellers. There was one who was left over. And of course, that was me. So I am going to be kicking off tonight's stories. This was a story that was a little bit longer. So I had asked for permission. So this is a little out of the ordinary that we're starting with a longer one. So here I go. We're traveling to Liberia, West Africa for this one. I don't usually tell stories about West Africa, but I did stay there a while. I was on a grant from my high school and I went with 2 other colleagues. One was my wife who works at the same school as me, and the other was a music teacher. And we were going to Liberia to train teachers. Liberia had just come out of 25 years of civil war. So this was around 2007 when I was there. And we were basically just showing teachers some of the things we do in our classroom, like group work and the different learning styles, you know, some of this kind of modern newfangled pedagogy, or how to assess essays using rubrics and things like that. And our host was also through our school. It was an acquaintance of one of the families through the United Methodist Church. So we stayed in the church mission. Well, we spent 9 weeks training teachers, and we stayed in the city of Monrovia. And that was really run down from the war. There was no running water, no electricity. And just to give you a quick image of what that's like, at night, there would be the glow of campfires from the gutted upper stories of what had once been modern, beautiful high-rise buildings. I think that really kind of captures it, what it was like in that city. And on the 10th week, our host, Jerry Kula from the United Methodist Church, said that he was going to reward us with a trip to the countryside. After 9 weeks in the city, the countryside sounded really, really good. We borrowed a car from the mission, which would explain why hanging from the rear view mirror was a life-size head of the Lord Jesus Christ. It had once been an air freshener, but it had long since lost its pine fresh scent. Now, we were only going to be traveling about 100 miles, but it was going to take 20 hours because of the conditions of the roads. And so we had to rotate drivers. Now, Jerry, our host from the church, he drove first. And at every intersection, he would stop, hop out of the car, and begin haggling with these men holding these braces of animals with exotic colored fur and long bodies. And he explained that every good African boy for a proper homecoming to his village must bring bush meat. Well, no matter how much he laughed or shouted or argued, he could never strike a deal. And so we left the city of Monrovia with no bush meat. I was the one when it happened. It was late at night. Everyone had fallen asleep. I was driving, and it was just me and Jesus in the front seat. And we had entered the bush, the forest. Roots stretched out over the road like fallen trees. And the trees themselves, they just disappeared up into the darkness out of sight. The earthy smell of the forest with the damp, cool air penetrated through the windows, causing me and Jesus to shiver. I went around one of the routes and I brought our car to a stop because there in the middle of the road were a pair of glowing eyes. I wondered, good Lord, what could this be? Leopard, rhino? We were in Africa. I had heard about something that was worse than the two combined, called a bush cow. Jerry, I hissed. He was in the passenger seat. Wake up. What is it? He demanded. Why have we stopped? And I pointed. Look. Jerry peered right over Jesus's shoulder, scrutinizing those glowing eyes through the windshield. Whatever it was had a white, wispy body that drifted around those two glowing orbs that were its eyes, like smoke or mist. Suddenly, Jerry shouted, "Get it!" And he rolled over the console and using this sort of backward kicking motion, stomped down on the accelerator. "Kill it!" he shouted, sending the car lurching right at this thing. And then alternating between the steering wheel and the gear shift, he caused the car to go forward and backward over this animal, whatever it was, again and again. We were hitting bushes in the front, bushes in the back. Behind us, of course, Irma and Doug had awakened and were howling in confusion. And for me, with Jerry on top of me going back and forth like this, It was like the windshield was beginning to pulse in and out of view, to the right, to the left. And one time, I swear, it was straight over my head, which meant the car had to be balancing on its rear view mirror. And that was the moment I came face to face with Jesus Christ. The air freshener. The car came down and was suspended at rest off the ground in a bush. Jerry jumped out of the passenger seat, and I heard all this grunting and growling. And finally, Jerry emerged in front of the car in the headlights, holding an animal with a long white body bleeding from its nose. "This African boy will have a glorious homecoming," he shouted in triumph. Well, we piled out of our respective doors, crawled through the bush, and emerged picking twigs and leaves and bits of bark from our hair. Of course, the triumph of the kill was beginning to wear off just a bit. And Jerry turned to us and asked rather sheepishly, "So, what do you think of African hunting?" And my wife, unable to disguise her disgust, said, "Jerry, I don't like it." Well, we pushed and pulled and rocked the car back and forth, but it was all in vain. We couldn't free it from the bush. And so we sat dejectedly on a root, staring at the cold glow of those headlights emanating from the bush. And adding insult to injury, that little white animal, that invincible thing, slinked off into the darkness and made its escape. It had somehow lived through all of this. Finally, after 15 minutes or so, Jerry said, "I have an idea. I know where we can go. You will be able to rest, and I will go on and get another car." And so in the pitch black, we walked on this road in the bush in West Africa, somewhere near the Guinea border. And sure enough, after about 2 hours, we came to a small shelter, still in the dark. And Jerry said, "Rest in here, but don't go outside. It's very dangerous." And I said, "Why?" thinking it was some other kind of animal I wouldn't know about. But he said, "I will show you." And he led us down to a field, and we stopped right in front of what I could sense was a large pit in the ground. A hole. "Is this natural?" I asked Jerry. "No," he said, "I dug this. And I dug that one over there. There are many, there and there and there." My colleague, Douglas, asked, "Jerry, are these animal traps? Is this more African hunting?" Jerry gave a dry laugh. "No," he said, "they are just holes." Well, we waited in that shed, and at dawn, Jerry still hadn't returned, and we counted 13 of these mysterious holes in the ground that had purportedly been dug by Jerry. Later, after we were brought to the village, Jerry's wife told a story and explained. When Jerry was young, one of his younger brothers had taken ill, and in a last-ditch effort to save his life, Jerry and his other brothers had tried to carry this boy the 3-day journey to the nearest medical clinic. He hadn't made it, and he had died in this clearing in Jerry's arms. And Jerry vowed that someday he would build a medical clinic if he had to do it with his own 2 hands. Later in life, sure enough, Jerry purchased the land and set about doing what you have to do if you're going to build anything. You dig a well so that you could have water to mix the cement. But the same thing happened. After about 10 meters, he hit an impenetrable shelf of rock. And after 13 attempts, Jerry gave up. He would have to rent a piece of equipment from Nigeria that would cost more than the whole hospital would. Well, the three of us returned from West Africa back to Sonoma County, and we were saturated with music and dance, and I had learned stories after story. And of course, we brought these to our classes. I told folk tales and oral epics, and I did tell that story about Jerry. And for years, it ended with Jerry standing in that field of holes that he had dug for that well. Well, one year, unbeknownst to me, a group of students got together and started raising money. They did bake sales and car washes. And after a year, they presented a large sum of money to me, and they gave a new ending to the story. You see, I was able to send that money, and now the story ends with Jerry standing in front of a medical clinic that he built with his own two hands, cinder block by cinder block. He acquired funding from the government of Liberia and the Methodist Church for 3 full-time nurses and 1 doctor. And so Jerry may not have brought bushmeat to his village, but he did bring good medical care for not only his village, but 2 others. Thank you.
Hey.
So that's part of a larger story with lots of other adventures. Liberia was a very interesting place to live, especially on the heels of the war. So I am going to call up to our virtual stage. Our first teller is Beth Wakely, and I need to find Beth Wakely. Goodness. There you are. Sorry, I went right over you.
Okay.
Welcome to Beth Wakely to the Do Tell virtual stage.
It's so good to see everybody. I had to miss a number of tellings, and I was just determined. So I have for you a very brand new, very short story that I just said, I just really want to tell this. This is an old favorite. It's called Old Joe and the Carpenter, and Pleasant Despain shares it in his multicultural book. Now, a long time ago, old Joe, he lived way out in the countryside. He was a farmer. He was getting on in years, and his neighbor happened to be his best friend. They were the only ones for miles around, it seems. Well, they raised their families, and now both their wives had passed on, and their children had been raised and moved on and had their own families. And so Joe had pretty much his farm and his neighbor. And they'd never had a disagreeable word until not so long ago. A calf had been found down the road quite a ways, and each one claimed it belonged to them. Well, Joe said, look, it's got markings just like my cow. It must be mine. And his neighbor disagreed, and the argument escalated. And rather than coming to blows, they both just turned around and stomped off. And they hadn't talked for weeks and weeks. They were stubborn. Joe had to go to market, and he was getting ready on a Saturday morning, hitching up the horses and thinking about things, and was inside when he heard a knock on the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door, and there was a young man there with very kind eyes, and looked up and said, I am looking for a little work. I'm very good with my hands, and if you have a project that I might, help you with, I'd be willing. He had a great looking toolbox with him. Well, Joe said, as a matter of fact, I do have a project. Look out there. Do you see that creek? Why, my neighbor, he just managed to dig a ditch right on my property line and let loose some of the water and created a creek running down my property line. And there's his house. And I want you to build a great big tall fence so I don't have to see that house again. Now I've got lumber and I've got posts and I've got everything you need in the barn here. I have to go to town. I'll be back before sunset. And so the carpenter went right to work, carrying the lumber from the barn to the creek side and sawing and hammering and creating and everything with the wood. But he worked so hard, he worked all day without even lunch. And as the sky was beginning to color just a bit, old Joe drove up with his wagon full of supplies, looked over, and his eyes went wide and his mouth went shut because he didn't even know what to say. For instead of a fence, the carpenter had built a footbridge, complete with beautiful handrails. It was a piece of lovely art. Joe couldn't believe it. He just stood there for a second. He looked up and why, there was his neighbor coming across with his hand outstretched, saying, Joe, we've got to stop this misunderstanding. You can have the calf. Joe said, oh, you can have the calf because our friendship is the most important thing. And look, this young man took it on himself to build this very nice bridge. They looked over and the carpenter was indeed putting his tools away, hoisting up his toolbox and getting ready to leave. But wait, said Joe, you did such wonderful work. I'm sure we have more projects. Ah, said the carpenter, I'd like to stay and help you, Joe, but I have more bridges to build. And with that, he walked on down the road with a happy humming tune following him. And that's that. So a short little respite.
Oh, we really need stories like that right now, don't we? Like,
That's one of the favorites. I used to share with my kids that one, but you know, Pleasant to Spain. I mean, this is oldie but goodie, multicultural tales to tell. And I thought, well, that one isn't really copyrighted. It's meant to tell. So
yeah, that was wonderful, especially given the times right now. Thank you for that. That was very uplifting. And I thought for sure it was going to end with fences, make good fences, make good neighbors. Very simple, but, I guess bridges make better ones. That's
they make good neighbors too.
really nice. Thank you so much, Beth.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, we're off to a great start. Thank you for that, Beth. And next up, we have Alicia Retes.
Thank you.
Going to you up.
I'm okay, just checking my sound there. I'm coming to you from the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok people of Marin County. Born in San Diego in 1921 and growing up in the Depression era, my mother, Alice Effie Johns Retes, flourished into many roles. A hydraulic welder in the Legion of Rosie the Riveters, an award-winning artist of baskets and quilts and costumes, an accomplished master gardener building beautiful gardens with fruit trees, tropical plants, vegetables, and exquisite roses. Alice was an honored educator and counselor for 31 years for the San Diego City Schools and for the Balboa Park Museums there for over 20 years. She married Federico Ricardo Retes, a Mexican citizen and a rancher in the 1940s when bigotry was deep. Her blood family even refused to attend her wedding. By the 50s, she was a struggling single parent of 3 children. She worked at night as a waitress for the El Cortez Hotel, and during the day, she attended the San Diego State College, where she earned her teaching degree. Alice loved to travel for any reason and in any modality. She went on many trips as a volunteer field researcher for the San Diego Field Research Foundation. In 1992, I was able to join her in the foothills, the campsite there, the foothills of the Sierra Madre Mountains in Sonora, Mexico. And together we interacted with and helped preserve the art and culture of the Mayo people. And later on, we created an English-Spanish documentary of the people and donated it to the the cultural center. But for me, the most exciting thing I think she went on was joining the crew for the evolutionary ecological expedition to Australia to study the sex life of a nutmeg tree. Alice kept a magnet on our refrigerator that said, "Life without music would be a mistake." She loved to play the piano and she loved to sing. So this is how my poetic tribute to her will begin. Around the world, Alice did go on trains or river rafts. She would just flow. Alice traveled in a Model T Ford on wood planks across the Mojave Desert floor. She flew in the first jumbo jets, then rode a camel in Australia and camped in canvas tents. In the outback, she'd be, for science, counting rain beetles on a nutmeg tree. She paddled a birch canoe, flew in a monoplane too. She enjoyed luxury liners with their mighty fine diners. And at 75, she went into overdrive, racing at 130 miles with Parnelli Jones, who said she was going too slow, but she gave it a go, driving and laughing in the sweetest of tones. Now, Lady Luck favored her with surprises. She'd buy 10 tickets and win 6 of the prizes. Crossword puzzles followed her around. She loved to solve them like kids like a good clown. Alice was never one to be idle, and a wizard with a needle. She made award-winning crafts as if it was an easy task. And oh, how she loved her seaside home and playing her white baby grand with its beautiful tone. Her ruby red roses were stunning, and it was nice sitting on the lawn, just sunning. Water skiing, tide pooling, boating. Her love for the ocean was big, no fooling. Sharing it with children was simply a must, and she did it without a fuss. To the seashore, she would drive them in her yellow Dodge Dart wagon to explore the tide pools and, oh, the marine life inside them. She hosted wonderful parties for her family and many a friend. Such good food and live music. I wish it would never end, but really, it doesn't, you see, because the spirit of Alice is in the hearts of you and in me. She's in the heavens, laughing and singing with every star. Oh, dear Alice, she's on the greatest adventure by far. Thank you. Yay. Thank you so much.
Alicia, that was so great and so timely, like, coming
Mother's
on the
Day.
heels of Mother's Day. of
That's why I
course.
thought I would do it, but
Yeah,
thank
that's
you very
terrific.
much.
There's something about the rhyming that makes all these diverse activities make perfect sense, like it really was a beautiful unified life.
Yeah,
I
it
really
was.
enjoyed that.
I when I wrote her biography, I said, so what do you think of your life? And she said, all in all, a good life.
Yes. I'd say
She really was quite an adventurer. I'm eventually going to do the biography, time permitting, for the Women by the Decades program. I did the poem and they said, well, we like that. We want to know more about her. So we'll see if I have time to do that. I'm also getting ready for the Sierra Festival. So.
Oh, right. Yeah. You should make an announcement about your role in the festival.
Oh,
later when we
yeah.
have an announcement.
And I have another announcement too. So thank you very much.
So I'll try to remember. Thank you very much, Alicia.
My pleasure. Thank
We're all
you.
lucky to have you here.
Oh, I appreciate that. I feel good to be here. I'm grateful to be here. My first swap was with the Do Tell.
Oh,
several years ago. So
good.
it's good to be back. Thank you.
You're one of ours then. So, Pete, we're so glad you are here.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to call you up to the Do Tell stage. You are very welcome here, and we're excited to have a new member, Pete Moffat.
I see myself running around my house looking for 2 white towels because I'm going to run out the front door, and I can hear a commercial airline. In those days, they were propeller air drives, and so they were flying really low altitudes. And so I was carrying these sheet towels around in the front yard, and I was waving my hands, and I just was sure that the pilot up there and all the instructors, they would see me running around in the yard, and the passengers, and I was waving back. So I just knew my whole childhood that I was waving at those pilots, and they were right back to me.
Oh,
I flew my interest in the aviation, and I went to college, and I joined Air Force ROTC. Got my private pilot license, and then as I got through graduate school, I decided to sign up for pilot training and to learn my wings. And my wife and I were assigned to West Texas, in the smallest town you've ever heard of, called Big Spring, Texas. I think there was maybe 6,000 people there, and we been there for about a week. We learned that the big main claim to fame for Big Spring, Texas was the largest world rattlesnake roundup every year. And man, that was not something we look forward to, but I learned this year that 30,000 people still come to that show. So as I'm in pilot training, there's a lot of responsibilities. We had 3 airplanes that I had to learn, and or I would wing my wings in the first plane, the second airplane, and then finally one of my dreams was to get my hands on a supersonic solo fighter airplane. And I finally got to that flying, and I got to fly all by myself and with instructor, and we flew pilot, where we flew fly 2 ships and 4 ships, and we had just every dream every child I ever imagined. But then it became serious, and it came time for me to sign what my next assignment was, my next station. And I chose, my first choice was a C-141 Mac heavy jumbo cargo plane. Now, the reason I chose that plane was because I had never left the United States, and I wanted to get out of the country. And so I knew flying a C-141, I'd be flying all over the country. So as we get ready, we choose the 141, and we are stationed in Charleston, South Carolina. We moved from Big Spring down to Charleston, a much big change. And I took my training in Oklahoma to learn how to fly that airplane. And then it was like a month I'd been to Charleston, and we showed up to the flight line the first day for me on my first trip. We sign up, the plane's all ready to go. The land's got the thing all land up and ready to go. And I am the pilot, and I'm sitting on the left the captain's seat of the airplane. I'm texting this monster airplane down the flyway. And you can imagine, with those huge jet engines on that airplane, that when you push those 4 engines ahead in your arm, you cannot believe how much power you can imagine feeling that power. So I was a young rookie pilot, and I was excited, and here we go, and we were flying off into space, and heading north, and we were headed for Anchorage Air Force Base. And about an hour and a half later, the pilot looks over to me and says, "You got it, rookie. Approach us when we approach Anchorage Air Force Base. We're hitting the bumps." I said, "Yes, sir, north to Alaska," I said. But to myself, like, holy cow, no one told me that I would be the only pilot awake on my very first international flight. No one ever told me that. Holy cow. So we started flying across the United States, and flying across the United States was like driving a interstate freeway. It's really easy to fly in that state. So we're flying across the states, and we're headed for Canada. And as we got into Canada airspace, my navigator, also on his very international flight, both of us were total green rookies. we're flying into Canada, and we started to say big changes all the way. There was no cities that we could find on the ground, the ground air trees on the ground, the signals that they gave us to give us signals were not viewing, very signal or confusing to us. In those days, there was no GPS and there's no laptops. This was back in that age. And so we were flying all across Canada with charts and pencils and pieces of paper. And we flew in the dark with just the two of us. Now, after a while, I started thinking about the responsibility. There's 50 people on board this airplane, this monster airplane, and I'm responsible for everyone. And my mind started to think about the responsibility for all of these people on board. And I start having these tensions in my mind and say, oh my God, what if we're off course? What if we want to run out of fuel? I mean, all these people are my responsibility. And it became the most wrenching dilemma in my life. For a couple of hours in my own mind, I wrestled with that dilemma. I finally decided, no, I'm not going to wait the captain. We're still going ahead. As we keep flying, the sun comes up behind us in the east, and we can see the land beneath us. And it is just as I expected, nothing but glaciers and mountains and no place to land. And we just keep flying. And after a while, there's this red orange flash, and I'd never seen a flash like that. I didn't know what it was. And so I just ignored it. And then we keep flying. And then there's another flashlight, and I didn't know what that was. And I still didn't know, but they started getting a little bit more common. Like, what are those orange? What's that orange flash? I thought maybe it was some kind of signal for me or something. And then after a while, I said, my gosh, could that be the Russians? Could the Russians be saying, oh my God, you're getting too close to Russian airspace? I was starting to lose my imagination. And so we kept flying. Then the Aurora Borealis lights came out, the Northern Lights, and everything was the cabinet was green. And then we kept flying, and we finally saw that the orange light became solid. And as we got closer and closer, we could see that the solid light was actually a reflection from the sun behind us on a glass office building on the way to Anchorage Air Force Base. So in fact, we were in time the whole time, but the last 6 hours were the most wrenching, difficult challenge of my life. Thank you.
Wow, that was an adventure.
It
The
was,
6 hours. Oh,
very
you must have been so exhausted after that.
It was exhausting, and you can just imagine the personal dilemma in your own head. And you know how we tend to create our own monsters in our minds.
Oh,
And it was just awful. And the rookie, I didn't want to say anything to the rookie because I didn't want to blow him out saying, hey man, do you know where we are? You know?
your commanding officer had a lot of faith in you.
Right. It was, of course I landed the plane and I didn't say anything to the captain. I forgot to mention that part. So,
Right.
whoo, that was my rookie flight.
That's great. That's a great story. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
very
hope
much.
you
I
come back
appreciate
and
that. Thank you
tell
all.
many stories here, Pete. You are very
Yes.
welcome here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I've got a lot of personal ones, so I'll sign up again.
That's terrific. Are you in Sonoma County?
I know I live in Encinitas, and
Oh, okay.
I took a class on try to learn how this craft, and so I've been practicing, and I just want to get better at this, and I really appreciate your patience and letting me practice and be with you all. And I've
Oh, we're
enjoyed
lucky
your
to
stories.
have you. You are very
Right.
welcome here.
Right. Thank you.
Very good. And she wanted to be in the first half, and she's going to
Yeah, thank you.
squeeze in. Here we go. Our
Thank you.
New York storyteller, Beverly Schwartz.
I was only 4 years old, and I was living in a two-family house above my grandparents, which were Orthodox Jews, the strictest codes they would follow. And they knew my parents were going to be moving sometime within a year. They were building a house out in the suburbs. And my grandmother's goal was to teach me how to make the meal for Shabbos on Friday night, when my aunt and uncle and all my cousins and my parents and them, we'd all sit around one big table and we shared the meal every Friday evening, which was very traditional. The same thing was always served. My grandmother was trying to teach me everything before I moved. That was her goal in life. She would teach me how to take cucumbers and how to pickle them and put them in big barrels on the back porch so that she could serve her pickles every week. We went to the fish store and got herring, and she showed me how to make pickled herring, which was the hors d'oeuvre for Friday night after the blessing of the wine and the serving of the challah, the bread you served. She showed me how to knead the challah. And then one day she came to me and said, "Come on, Bev, we're going to take a bus ride downtown. We're going to make chicken for dinner." "Oh, that's good, Grandma, but you make it every week." "Yeah, we have to, it's Shabbos." And in a burlap bag, she was carrying, "Cluck, cluck, 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 cluck." "Oh, what's in there, Grandma?" "Oh, it's a chicken. It's for you. I bought it just for you." I thought it was going to be a pet for me. She never told me it wasn't. So off we went. I didn't know where we were going with my new chicken, and we took a bus downtown. We got off the bus, across the street, and we walked into this room. Cluck, cluck, cluck. There was hundreds of other chickens and other women there. They're all sitting on benches with sawdust on the floor, pulling their chickens' feathers. And as they did it, "Cluck, cluck, Grandma, they're hurting the chickens." "No, don't worry about it." And she took out my chicken. She says, "I'll teach you how to pluck your chicken." "I'm not going to hurt my chicken." So she did it. And then she said, "Come on." And then she put the chicken back into the bag. Oh, my poor chicken. I was so upset. And then we went towards a rabbi who had a gray beard and a hat. And every time a woman came up, he said a prayer, and he took the chicken with him behind him. And there was something like a big sink or something, he put it in. So he took my chicken out of the bag and he turned around and, "Cluck, cluck, cluck, cluck," and puts it in the sink. And then all of a sudden my chicken was quiet. He turned around, my grandmother held the bag open. My chicken looked limp, and he put the chicken in the bag. "Grandma, is my chicken okay?" "Oh, it's just great. We're doing great, Bev. We have to get up and now start the supper." So I'm looking to see in my bag, is the chicken moving anymore? Is it okay? And she's talking to the other ladies, and I'm just staring at my bag where the chicken was put. When we got home and she took the chicken out of the bag on the kitchen table, I realized the chicken was no longer alive. I was like shocked. I didn't know what to say or ask or do. "Bev, now it's time to learn how to take the eggs out of the chicken." She goes, "Now watch, you stick your hand in and you're going to feel something round and soft. You pull it out. That's going to be your chicken eggs." And she took them out, and I said, "Those aren't eggs. There's no shells around them." And she says, "That's because the shells don't develop until they're coming out of the chicken." She goes, "This is what makes my chicken soup so good. You take these eggs and you put them in the soup. And every day, every Friday, when we have our soup, our chicken soup, everyone tells me mine's the best." Well, she ended up preparing the chicken in the roasting pan. I just was speechless at that point. "I'll see you later for dinner, Bev." Well, my cousins were all there. It was a festive occasion. They had the prayer over the wine and the challah. We had the pickles. We had to pass around the soup. And when the soup came around, I said, "No, thank you." And I just passed it. I was not going to have my chicken soup that I had a chicken, lost the chicken for. And then the plate of chicken came around. Again, I swore I was never going to eat any part of a chicken as long as I lived. So I passed the chicken around. Well, we moved about a year later to the suburbs, Latham. Now, my parents weren't very religious. They were Reform. So they didn't care about foods being kosher and being blessed by a rabbi. And they went to the local grocery store called Price Chopper. And today, I eventually started eating chicken again and chicken soup. But when I go to Price Chopper to buy food, especially chicken, I say, thank God for Price Chopper.
Oh, Bev, that was
My
you took us
chicken.
on a ride. Yeah. You made us care a lot about that chicken in your story. What a coming of age story that is too. I think I hear a chicken.
Clack, 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 clack.
I thought I heard something. Who's doing that?
I think it's Vicky.
I think so too. Vicky makes sounds.
Who is it?
It's Debbie Downer, right?
I can't, I'm not disposed. I'm driving.
Okay. That was wonderful. Those are very convincing. I thought it was the ghost of the chicken.
Oh God. Every time I buy chicken, but I learned something about eggs. They don't get the shell until they start coming out.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I was at my vet today and I told him my chicken story. Well, we were looking at my cats and taking them, examining them. And he says, yeah, they don't form their shells until they start coming out.
That's
I
amazing.
have one quick question, if I may.
Mhm.
I had to do something similar. I won't tell the story, but when we plucked the chicken, it was already dead and put in warm water so the pulling of the feathers wasn't so hard. And did I hear right that they pulled the feathers when the chicken was alive?
Yeah, they had sawdust on the
I-
floor and the benches, and all these women were talking as they were plucking their chickens. It was a Friday tradition for Shabbos.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
everybody's chickens were screeching and screaming, and I'm sitting there saying, what are they doing? They're hurting these chickens, I just, I was only 4 years old, and it's just
Sorry, Bev. Thank
So
you.
much, Bev. I think we have time for another story before our break.
Well, why don't we have the break?
Okay, and you're the
that-
one who's going to be first then when
Okay.
we come back. Is that okay, Katie?
Yeah, no, I think that would be good because then we have three tells. We have Vicky and Genevieve.
Yeah, and Genevieve. Terrific. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. I will pause the recording. And when we come back, we'll introduce ourselves and there will be time for announcements. Pete, are you okay? I thought you've already met us. It'll be easy. And not to worry. And then we will have some announcements and then we'll have three great stories to take us home. Very good, everyone. If you are up for it, I recommend putting your Zoom on gallery view and you can chat with one another. I will pause the recording so there won't be any evidence or anything. Let's see, where is my recording? Okay, recording. Welcome back to the second half of our Do Tell Swap May edition. And I know we have 3 great tellers lined up for the second half. But before we do that, it's nice to always take a little bit of time to introduce ourselves. I am Brandon Spars. I'm a high school teacher here in Santa Rosa. And this month's prompt is just, it's kind of something you can do what you will with it. It's 2 words, Hail Mary. So you can use hail as the weather or you can use it however you want. And Katie and I were inspired because as we were thinking of a prompt, it began to hail. And my little 3-sentence story is, I don't think my dog had ever seen it before. we adopted him, and we sent him outside, and he felt the hail on his back, and he came roaring right back in. So I'm going to pass it to Katie now, and she can
Hi.
introduce
Oh.
herself, our co-chair.
Hi, I'm Katie Mangan. I come from Santa Rosa, and my hail story took place many summers ago. We spent the summer up in Tahoe, and you often have freak summer storms. And we have a Bronco, but it was open, and so we had our kids sitting in the back, and you know, if it rained, they got wet. Anyway, there was a hailstorm, and our neighbor thought we might be coming back, and he thought this would be fun because it was hailing, and he wanted to have a good laugh. So he sat on his porch with a beer can. But we pulled up just after the hail had finished, and so that's my hail story. Hail Mary.
I remember that story. That was one of the first stories I heard you tell, Katie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a great story.
Okay.
And next up we have Bev.
The first time I ever heard of the Hail Mary was I was up to bat and the girls' Little League team organization I had started, and when I was in 6th grade in the 50s, and it was second base and third base, and it was the bottom of the 9th, and we needed to win. And I was up to bat, and they said, Bev, we need a Hail Mary. I had no idea what a Hail Mary was, but I go and I hit I struck out. I had never had a hit the whole season. And I hit the ball and it went over the second fielder's head, and the 2 runs came in, and I made it to first base, and we won the game with that Hail Mary. You know, and I had no idea I was Jewish. So all these kids with the Catholic kids that, you know,
Right.
in the area, and I was the only Jewish one, 4 Jewish kids in my whole high school and school. So I had no idea what it meant.
That is a classic Hail Mary.
Yeah.
And next up we have Alicia.
Hail Mary. I've seen hail in this is in Marin County, and they were like the size of golf balls. I've never seen them so big. And for Mary, well, Mary is my middle name, named after Mary O'Brien, the first female school principal in Folsom, California. And she's my godmother. So
Oh,
that's all
nice.
that's all I have to say about Mary.
You did both parts of it too. That's neat.
Hmm.
And next we have Debbie. Can you speak? You're driving or no?
Yeah, hi. What to say about Hail or Hail Mary? Oh, I was in one hail bout driving the freeway in Oakland and just slowed the car down while hail pelted down. It was about 1/2-inch hail, rather dramatic. Well, I like to be prepared, and I thought I would design. I don't sew very well, but I love capes, and they're simple lines. So I've made a few of those in my life, and I thought I would design a cape that not only was good for rain, but hail. And I would put a plastic padded, anyway, this is a design. I never did actually make one. I wanted a hail-proof cape, just in case. So you're always prepared for anything in the world, as best you can be. I won't go further with my things I thought to do to prepare, but you never know. Hail may come. Thank you.
I like the sound of that, a hail-proof cape.
Storm,
Yeah,
strong storm cape.
like Kevlar in the lining or something. I don't know. And thank you. It's good to have you, Debbie.
Thank you. Sorry for my late entrance here.
Oh, not at all.
I was driving up, and I'm so glad I just put that on my note yesterday, but
Yeah.
nice person.
And next up we have Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm from Sebastopol, and I just love storytelling, and I'm not, it's just something that is just really important now. But for Hail Mary, first thing I think of is full of grace. And how does that? But I wasn't very graceful with a hailstorm here a few years back. We had a pretty major one, and you mentioned these huge size things. I was out there scooping them up, putting them in the freezer so I could share them.
Right?
Like they were really going to stay solid to take to class and show off to the students. But that's that. It was raining. I didn't hear hail tonight, but pretty close to it. So we don't know. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Beth. We're glad you're here. And next up, we have Pete.
Hello, I would like to bring notice to, I volunteer twice a day at an amazing farm to school that's right down the street from where we live in Encinitas. There's about 4 acres where the farmer and a few volunteers raise all the produce for 5,700 children that go in the elementary school. And I cannot believe how much food they produce for those kids. It's all organic and regenerative and hard work. And it's great exercise for me twice a week. And so they do a wonderful job there.
That's great. Well, thank you. That gives us a sense for us of how you're spending your days, Pete. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Ellie Shiva.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, Pete, I lived in Leucadia and went to school in Encinitas, which I taught in the 50s. So I told about last time about getting a 4-leaf shamrock.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yes.
Because the kids in school I was new kid on the block and I didn't have anything green to wear. But Hail Mary, here came the inspiration. My mother told me to go up the hill and get what the old guy from Ireland had for me, and I did. And I could pick any shamrock that came straight from Ireland as seeds. And it turned out I found a 4-leaf one, and he let me have it. And boy, was I queen of the ball then at school. I wasn't pinched all the time, ever. So that's a good, yeah, I remember my dad swearing Hail Mary because he dropped a cinder block on his foot and cut his toe in half when it was my 16th birthday. That's the other flip side of Hail Mary, I think.
Yeah. I remember that Shamrock story quite well, Ellie Shiva. That was a wonderful story.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Elaine.
Shall I hail thee on this fine day? Hail yes.
Wow.
I was off backpacking in the Sierras. It was a wonderful, warm, sunny day. We hiked up into the hills and made camp, and then big clouds rolled in, and all of a sudden it started to hail. And it hailed hailstones that were probably like biggie marbles.
Wow.
And the ground got white with them. And some friends had brought along some scotch, and they said, "Well, scotch, it's time for scotch. Get the hail, we need ice."
Oh.
It's the first time we ever had ice in our drinks when I was off backpacking. It was a wonderful trip. But we came up with this little hailing each other from time to time with hail. So shall I hail thee on this fine day? Hail yes. Here's to you and here's to me.
And I swear Elaine did not know the prompt in advance. You
No,
would
I
not
did
have
not.
known it from your performance there. That was really great, Elaine. Best use of hail I've ever heard, too.
It was a fun trip.
Vicky, you are on.
Yeah. Unmute myself. let's see, I'm Vicki Ness from Sebastopol in Northern California, and I belong to, our family is one of 47 families on community wells. And so I'm one of the volunteers who goes around and reads the different well meters. And that means traipsing around in weeds and woods, and it's an awful job. Do it in December, do it in June. Well, one June, the other woman I was with and I were just covered in burrs, and all of a sudden it started hailing. I mean, just out of nowhere, hailing. And we were in this guy's backyard and his wife was trying to find the meter and he was barbecuing and he did not stop barbecuing. And the hail was bouncing off of the stakes and bouncing, and he did not budge. He was going to keep on barbecuing. And for what it's worth, somebody somewhere did say, oh, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. The Mary did show up.
Vicki, that was amazing. I guess it's better if it hails because it bounces off and it doesn't soak the fire. I don't know. I mean,
Weird,
that's
weird.
really true determination on his part, though. Thank you. That was really funny. And John and Cher. I can't see Cher though. Is she hiding behind the?
There
Oh,
she is.
there she is. Yeah.
What does it say? Okay, unmute myself, I think. Can you hear us?
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really, I'm John Christian. I live in Bodega, and we didn't get hail here, which, you know, it sounds like recently you guys did over in Santa Rosa, maybe. And I don't really have any hail stories except, you know, remembering from time to time when I've been somewhere where it started to hail and I was able to duck into a cow shed or somewhere that had a metal roof, and it was like, well, this is really nice to be under here while it's hailing and listening to that sound. So.
Was there any scotch in there?
Unfortunately, no.
No. Okay. And Cher?
Mary the cow, I guess.
Mary the cow, right.
I share, and the bodega is California, for those of you far away.
Right.
Actually, a couple of months ago, I was here by myself, and I went outside to get some wood, and it was hailing. So it was actually kind of exciting, and it's really pretty too, because it's, you know, it looks kind of like it snowed. Because everything's all white with the hail. So it was kind of fun that I just happened to be outside when it started hailing.
Yeah, it really did start to look almost like it was snowing where I am on the roofs of all the houses. They looked white just, you know, about an hour ago or whatever.
Oh,
That's a beautiful image. Thank you, Cher. Great to see you. And next we have, whoops. I meant to replace you. There you go. Genevieve.
I have two quick things. When my sisters went away, one to law school, the other one to graduate school at Austin, at UT Austin, they came back to El Paso for a visit. Now, El Paso's on the westernmost tip of Texas. People there normally don't have an accent. If you're Anglo-American, you speak American. But if you're Latino American, you have a certain little. But my sisters came back with a completely different way of talking. This was Central Texas. And darned if they didn't have a 2 to 3 syllable, hey, and well, this one had 4 syllables. Well, damn.
Yeah, I don't know how some people fit all those syllables in there. I agree.
What I remember though, what caught my attention, something recently, I go to chapel service at the Bishop's Ranch in Healdsburg from time to time, and they had a song that had different words to a song that I grew up with called Salve Regina. in May, the practice was for all the children to take flowers to the Virgin Mary. And I was selected as the kindergarten representative because I wasn't expected to live to first grade.
Oh,
And I remember going up there and I was in the front, and then the 8th grader was the Queen of May. And, you know, I would pass the little crown of flowers to her and she'd put it on the Virgin. And I had a little band of flowers. My mother kept that band.
oh.
And she put it at the bottom of our Statue of Liberty, not Statue of Liberty, statue of Our Lady of Fatima. And when she died, I brought that statue of Our Lady of Fatima back.
Mm.
By then the flowers had disintegrated, but her love for the Virgin didn't, and her gratitude didn't either.
That's nice. Let's
Those
see.
songs are really, songs of our childhood really bring back memories, don't they?
Yes. Now, Katie, have I missed somebody? At this point, the names get a little out of order. Bev, you went, right? Yeah.
I
And
think you have everybody. Nobody's been left out.
good.
Yeah, good. Well done.
Terrific. Wonderful. So that was fun. What great, it sounded like, I mean, it's just always surprising what great little anecdotes come up with a simple prompt like that.
Yeah.
So Katie, I'm going to turn over the stage to you for some announcements first before we begin the stories. And it sounded like Alicia had some, and there might be some others, but go right ahead.
You know, I don't really have any announcements because we missed you, Genevieve. You told it the genre story in April, but that's probably recorded, so we could probably catch that, right?
Oh, that was fantastic.
I might tell it again, right, Brandon?
Yeah, if for the San Francisco Free Folk Festival, which is on July 16, I will be hosting that from Bali, Indonesia. So that's it's not even, it's July 17 for me, but don't write that down. It's July 16 here. And yeah, let's hope you can tell that as part of the panel on genre tales.
Oh, nice.
It would be worth a repeat performance without a doubt.
Thank you for your interest.
Oh, I have a cramp. I'm sorry.
And go ahead, Katie.
Oh, sorry. In June, Vicky will be telling at the genre stories the fantasy and fairy tales.
Oh, wonderful.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. And then did you want to say something about Vicky's workshop?
Vicky held a workshop recently, and Bev and Sharon and myself took it, and it was 2 hours, really well worth it. One of the best storytelling workshops I've ever attended. And so I'm hoping that maybe she will offer it again, and you know, you might really like to sign up because it's fun and you're not put on the spot at all, and you know, she really just draws out all your creativity, and you just have a really, really good time. So
it's terrific.
You know, maybe she will do another one. I hope she does.
I hope so, Vicky. I'd love to attend. Now, Alicia, did you have some announcements you wanted to share?
Just a couple. I will be participating with the SAC genre May 18th for Legends. And I invited Tim Tingle, who's a well-known, award-winning author and Choctaw teller. So he'll be there along with Mike Thompson, and I don't know who else, but and then I am going to be performing for the Sierra Storytelling Festival. I think that I might be the poem that I did tonight. One of the reasons why I wanted another opportunity is I think I want to do it at the festival, just to show some variety. I'm known mostly for telling indigenous tales, but I have original pieces. And so thank you for letting me do that. And I'm super excited because today's the birthday of my very first website, which I'll put in the chat and send it off to you. It's very simple. I just needed to be sure that people can find me. Apparently the Sierra Storytelling Festival couldn't find me. I mean, I'm all over YouTube, but so I'm excited about that. And I put that in the webs in our chat. I do welcome your input. It's real simple, but if you catch any typos, you know, or anything like that, or if you have any suggestions, I'm very open to it. And thank you also very much for having these swaps. It's just fantastic.
Well, thank you, Alicia. We put your website in the chat so we can go and check it out. Please do.
It's there. It's real easy.
Oh, great.
AliciaRedis.com.
Wonderful. That's great.
Thank you.
And so we're going, are there other announcements?
I just wanted to say that Meg isn't with us tonight.
Oh.
Her mother, Mary Turner, is in the hospital right now. So we can just also send our best wishes to her. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, we'll all keep her in our thoughts. Well, Katie, you are spotlit now. And it's your turn to tell a story on our virtual stage. So please welcome to our Do Tell Story Swap stage, Katie Mangan.
Okay, I'll just start the timer here. Thank you. Recently, I took a workshop from Vicki Ness, and it was super fun and super creative. And after that, I got this story. On the edge of town, there is a large warehouse, and it's just full of shelves. And on the shelves are books of all shapes and sizes. I know this because I am a book there. But I'm different from all the other books. My pages are creamy white, but there's no type on them. I'm blank. Well, I decided I wanted to do something about that. And so I manifested a head for myself, arms, and 2 legs, a backpack into which I put a pencil sharpener, and an eraser, just in case. And then with my backpack on, I quietly opened the back door and stepped out onto the city streets. You know, the streets were really noisy and dusty, and I just wanted to be somewhere else. And then I found myself walking down a country road. There were green fields and trees all around. It was just beautiful. And there was this charming stone-walled cottage with a thatched roof, advertising afternoon cream teas. So I sat down at a table, and immediately somebody served me a pot of tea, a plate full of freshly baked scones, a big tub full of the creamiest golden cream you could imagine, and a pot of strawberry jam. And even before I lifted the lid, I could smell those strawberries. So I cut one of the scones in half. I slathered on the cream, and I slathered on the jam, being very careful not to splash my creamy white pages. And I sat there and I thoroughly enjoyed them. And of course, I congratulated myself on manifesting this wonderful experience. Why, I chuckled. I could be on the side of a mountain being blown about by an icy wind. And with that thought, there I was. But on the side of the rocky path, there was a sign to a wise old man. So I thought I would continue on. But you know, I was in the cloud, it was wet, it was cold, it was miserable, and I was just about to turn around when I saw another sign to a very wise old man. So I continued on. I turned a corner and stepped out of the cloud into brilliant sunshine. And there, sitting on a rock, was a very wise old man. I sat beside him and I took in these stunning views. And I thought about a question I could ask him. And then I turned to him and said, "Oh, very wise old man, how can I write brilliant, witty, and zany stories for folks to enjoy?" He didn't move, but then he suddenly turned on me with his fierce blue eyes boring down into my pages. "Book, if you want to tell brilliant and witty stories, zany too, you must take a workshop." So I thought about that, but he hadn't finished. "You need to take a workshop from Vicky Ness. She lives in Sebastopol, Northern California." And with that, he was gone. He was out in his trance again. And suddenly, this huge black dragon zoomed past with fire coming out of its nostrils. I was following it. It was amazing. It was so acrobatical. It was doing loop-de-loops and everything. I was so enthralled, I didn't realize somebody was standing beside me. It was a beautiful princess. "Oh, don't you love dragon? Oh, he's so athletic. Oh, I just love watching him so much." And then we heard a fanfare of trumpets. "Oh no, it's the prince." And galloping towards us through the air was this magnificent white horse with this tall, dark, impossibly handsome man, obviously the prince. "Don't worry, dear princess. I shall save you from the dragon." "Oh, I don't want to be saved." But the prince took no notice and went off, and the dragon and the prince began to fight. Oh dear, it's always the same. They fight, and then finally the dragon lets the prince win. And the prince has to come over and say he's rescued me. And so I have to get up on the horse and sit behind him. And then he rides off into the sunset. I mean, it's so incredibly boring and stupid. We go nowhere. And then she stamped her foot and she shouted, "Now stop fighting. And Prince, just go away." The dragon and the prince came over, and the prince said, "But where shall I go?" And we all thought about that. And it was the very wise old man who sprang into action. "Young prince, I have 3 words for you. Hollywood, Southern California." And he pointed in the direction, I presume, of Hollywood, Southern California. And so the prince just turned his horse around and rode off in that direction. Well, the dragon and I asked the princess what she'd like to do now. "Oh, I've always wanted a cream tea." "Oh," I said, "I know where we can get one." We invited the very wise old man, but he was deep in a trance. So the princess and I climbed on the dragon's back, and before you know it, there we were at the charming stone-walled cottage with the thatched roof. The princess and I sat down at a table, and the dragon, well, he lay in the grass in the shade of the tree. But the princess loved the cream tea. "Oh, Book, I have a tiny favor to ask you. Would you tell me a story? You must have lots of them inside you." Oh, it was my worst nightmare. I didn't know what to say. And then the words got stuck in my throat. And suddenly, out came all these letters, hundreds of them, and they danced all around us. And then I realized that the letters were forming words, and the words were forming sentences, and the sentences, paragraphs, the paragraphs, chapters, and the chapters. They just jumped inside of me. And so I told the princess a story, and she thought it was witty and fun. Later, we heard that the prince was wildly successful in Hollywood. And the very old wise man, the dragon, the princess, and I, why? We lived happily ever after.
Katie, that was brilliant. That was witty. And it was indeed zany. That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, and I can really see how that workshop gave you, you know, a new kind of approach and perspective. That's really fun.
I've never told a story like that before.
Right.
Yeah. So
I
thank
love,
you, Vicki.
I love that it was a wonderful homage to Vicki too. That's really neat. And it's really also very fitting. And I think I'm just going to leave Katie up here with me to welcome to the stage Vicki Ness.
No pressure there, huh? Okay. Lorna was the janitor at a small town museum, and they were very proud of their museum. Every night she would go in the back employee entrance, head to her locker, put the lunch up on the little shelf, put her apron on, tie it in the back, and then she would go to the janitorial closet and she would come out rattling her mop and bucket. And she would go into the grand hall, which actually wasn't that big. And in the darkness, all the shapes were soft and gray and elegant until she had to flip on the lights. And the lights were brilliant and hot, white, surgical, glaring. Every single surface was illuminated. And that made all the normal activity outside in the evening windows turn into black asphalt against the windows. And she felt encased. Well, she mopped the floors, and she got the glass cleaner, and she was squeaking on the glass. And she looked around, and over there was a fox in a diorama that had a rodent in its mouth. And it was mid-run, but its eyes were gummed over with some kind of sticky goo, the glass just cloudy. And the fur had a fine gray dust all over it. And then she looked over here, and there was a showcase with beautiful bugs impaled onto a board with spindly, fragile looking letters that looked like fly legs sticking up. The Latin names, long Latin names for each beautiful bug. And then she looked at the pièce de résistance of the whole museum, and that wasn't actually a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is what they always wanted, but instead an elephant had died in a zoo 40 miles north, and they bought it and they reconstructed the skeleton, Jimbo. There he was in the middle of the museum under the lights. And she liked Jimbo, and she would go and talk to him sometimes and pet his knee. And she so wished that she could be in the museum when the school kids come in, just like confetti flying everywhere, or when the adult classes come in with their, their clipboards and their note-taking, and they're very intense, or the young couples who really aren't looking at anything but each other. Oh, she missed all the life that comes in and out of the museum. But at midnight in the museum, it's cold, and there's a sepulchral silence and death. And she looked around her and thought, this isn't a museum at all, it's a mausoleum. And I'm entombed. Oh, I wish there was life in here. Then she got an idea. Pulled a fire escape. which is what she did. And presently, all these lovely young people showed up in these wonderful outfits of brass buttons and epaulets and hats, and they had hoses, and they had flashlights, and they had walkie-talkies, and they were everywhere. Even a couple reporters showed up, and everybody filled the hall, looking around under tables, above things. And of course, there was nothing there, but oh, it was such a party for such a wonderful time. And eventually they realized there was nothing there. And so they all packed up and went home, except for one. That would be the police chief. And he was there in his favorite Columbo coat. He was so hoping that there'd be a photo in the newspaper of him saving the museum from anarchists with a fire venge. But it wasn't to be. It was just him and Lorna. So he fished around in the pocket and got one of those little cellophane packages with the little cheesy crackers and the peanut butter and the cheesy crackers in between. That's what he ate when his stomach was upset. And he was crunching away at it. And he walked the hall, crunching. And following behind him, of course, were trails of neon orange cracker crumbs. And Lorna looking like a very upset school child. Finally, when he finished his crackers, he turned and looked at her, and he folded up the cellophane and put it in his pocket. And in a look that he hoped was benevolent, he said, "You know, what you did was illegal. It was illegal." And he looked at her with a piercing gaze. Oh dear, Lorna looked up at him with her most fragile violet. Oh, trembling. Oh, but I didn't mean this. Oh, I just don't know what happened. Oh, she knew very well what happened. When you are an old woman, you get just so many passes to do totally wackadoodle things and everybody accepts it. And she was calling in one of those passes right now. Oh, I don't know what happened. I just pulled a little out of her. Oh. Well, the police chief looked down at her and said, "You know, Ms. Lorna, retirement is a good thing. Lots of people have a second childhood with their retirement. Have you considered retiring?" Oh, no. Oh, goodness, no, I couldn't retire. Jimbo would miss me. He's very shy, you know, he only talks to me. Jimbo would be heartbroken. I can't possibly. At which point, the police chief realized that he had been outgunned, outmanned, and outshot. So he turned, tightened his Columbo belt, and walked out the door. And she watched as the red lights went off into the darkness. And there she was alone again, with the tarred in black windows of night and the sepulchral silence and the icy white lights glaring down at her. And she thought, well, I guess I better get the broom and sweep up the crumbs because, oh dear, what was that? What is that? It was a bold little mouse crawling out to a ginormous crumb. Oh my goodness, he was so cute. He was adorable. Then Lorna got the second brilliant idea of the night. She went back and got her bologna sandwich, and she sat down very quietly at the edge of a display case, and she unwrapped her sandwich and threw him a crumb. Came closer. He sat up on his haunches and he looked right at her. Oh, she was charmed. I have a visitor. You and I need to do this every night. You and I will do this every night. Oh, won't it be fun? And then as she ate her bologna sandwich, she said, you know what I'm going to call you? I'm going to call you Vida. It's a very short Latin name, but it means something very big. It means life.
Oh, Vicky, I was so worried with all the stuffed animals that we weren't going to get a, don't say stuffed.
Not the little mouse, no.
Right. I was worried we weren't going to get an animal imitation. I guess you can't say impersonation, but that was wonderful.
Thank
and very touching and beautifully balanced. Thank you so much for that story. And yeah, you got a nice comment about your descriptions and the rodent mid-run, petting an elephant's knee. All those details just add up to a whole imaginative world for us. Thank you very much. So I know, Genevieve, I'm going to do the setting for you so that you should see, well, I've adjusted it for the way you want. And would you like me to find the file you sent me? Will that, I could probably share my screen after your story if that would be appropriate. So please welcome to the stage.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. If people want and we have time, sure, thank you.
Yeah, well, take it away, Genevieve.
Walking into the Journey Center in Santa Rosa for the first time brought me to a place at the core of my soul. The colors of its peach and parchment walls are like those of my home. There's a resonant memory of a dream that I once had, and I feel a gentle welling of tears in my eyes. It has long been a place of spiritual respite, and that day it housed an exhibit of paintings as part of a celebration of its founding. I was greeted by a tall, blonde woman dressed in long, white embroidered cotton, the artist, a watercolorist, an alchemist. We sat and talked of her story of immigration 25 years ago from Uzbekistan, and then of letters sent to her by persons who had bought her paintings in the past. She tells me the compelling tale of the canvas of tangerine-colored canna lilies that one day broke through the long, long grief of a bereaved woman. Though unseen by me, they linger vividly in my mind's eye. We walk from one painting to another as I ask, what brought you to creating this one? And this one? Her answers are simple, but that's not all there is. By the end of the evening, the newly sold paintings tell other stories, this time of how they were chosen. A dentist takes with her a child gleefully laughing behind enormous round sunglasses against a background of fanciful floating donuts. A demure little hedgehog sits in a teacup, destined for the English mother of another. In the hands of a third, a nebulous horse gallops into the azures and soft oranges of a hazy sunset. And though I left it where it was, I was thoroughly charmed by a baby turtle in colors of amber, sepia, and sand, walking homeward to a golden sea, whose journey was evocative of my own. Then there was the raffle. Raffles have instilled in me injudicious cravings for Bay Area dream houses at $250 per ticket, for Super Lotto, Powerball, and Mega Millions winnings, and for KQED trips to Paris, to Australia, and beyond. And I have at last tamed those hankerings. No, no, get back, down, go away. So I bought a single $5 ticket with absolutely positively no expectations of being chosen. So much so that I promptly misplaced the ticket. But when a single stop was pulled from a lovely woven basket, my name was called. The prize was any single painting up to a value of $200. Can I pay the difference if one goes above the prize amount? I asked tentatively, with no particular reason. Yes, was the reply. So I sweep quietly along the walls for a moment or two, taking in the paintings. The baby turtle is well under the price limit, and its modest size will fit nicely into any little nook. Undoubtedly doable. But was this what the moment called for? I was in a meditation center. How will I honor this gift? By listening to my heart. I turned to a painting that I had passed by earlier when at $330, it was well beyond my even thinking of giving way to my longing to capture and contain things that take my breath away. But I've been profoundly drawn to this painting of a little girl whose eyes look directly out and through the eyes of the viewer. She's in traditional Russian dress with braided hair crossed over the crown of her head, strings of colored beads underneath her soft chin, and an exquisite colored scarf wrapped around her head and over her shoulders. The apple she's holding in her tiny hands feels like the earth. And her gaze. Hues of ruby and teal and emerald and rose flow into the painting's elaborate details, and yet it's made of a transparent clarity. It speaks of being somewhere else and yet being here at the same time. This child, though robed in the traditions of her country, is not of any particular country at all. Her being has no boundaries. She is emblematic of peace, of that which unites us, of our very essence. I welcome her home.
Oh, that is so, your descriptions are absolutely amazing. And you sent me the picture, but I think we can all picture it already. But just to test our skills of imagination, let me see if I can pull this up. Are people seeing this?
Yeah, it's visible.
So there it is. That's a beautiful painting. And that is in your house now, is that right?
Yeah.
That's gorgeous, Genevieve. What a wonderful presence to live with. I see why you chose it.
I just thought in these times when countries are being invaded and taken over, that the children know no boundaries. The children are born of peace. They represent peace.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, we have come to the end of our stories, and I'm going to call the storytellers up one more time. Pete, welcome. By the way, Pete, I like how you lit yourself in the background. It looks very good the way you did that.
Thank you
So
very much. Thank you.
we have Beth and of course Katie and Alicia and Bev and Vicky. And am I missing anybody else? I always trust Katie will catch me if I've made a mistake.
I think you've got everyone.
Yeah, well, we have
Yes.
they were all very memorable stories too, so that was pretty easy to remember. So I want to thank everyone for another wonderful swap, and
I learned so much. Thank you so much.
oh,
I learned
good.
so
Well,
much. It was so beautiful, and it's just wonderful. I've learned so much today, and just beautiful, like I say.
yeah. Well, Pete, we're very happy to have you, and we sure hope we see you the second Tuesday in, gosh, is it already June? I can't believe it.
My God.
June. And Genevieve has her hand up.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that if you wanted to see my historical genre story, I posted a link.
Oh, good. Yeah. Is that in the chat?
Yeah, I just posted it.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Now, Elaine, I want you to have the last word tonight. How did you say that? Hail, all hail, hail, yeah. Say that again.
I said, shall I hail thee on this day?
Yes.
Hail,
Say-
yes.
Hail, hail, hail.
That's how we're going to end.
All
tonight.
hail.
Yeah.
Thank
Shall
you.
we hail one another in June?
Yay.
Hail,
yes. I love it.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah.
Thank
for
you,
being our
Brandon and
MC.
Katie. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank
It
you,
takes each
everyone.
and every one of you to make a good swap. So
Mhm.
you're correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The highlight of our month.
I agree.
Yes.
Indeed.
Welcome, Pete.
Well, bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night now.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.